Today I am chatting to Nick Ryan, who is behind the Thomond Gate whisky from Limerick in Ireland. We also talk about the deep connection between whisky and coffee that has been highlighted by his recent collaborative project with the Lost Barn Coffee Roastery and Coffee Shop near Malpas in Cheshire, a must-visit place. A very good morning to you, Nick, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat from the Horsebox about your very special Thomond Gate whisky and also about your collaboration with the wonderful coffee shop, the Lost Barn. So let's get sipping. Would you like to just first of all tell us a little bit about where you were brought up in Limerick and how you came to get absorbed into country life in North Wales?
Yeah, so my wife is from North Wales, so it's very close to my heart, and we spent quite a good bit of time up here over the last number of years. Before when we lived in London and over as back and forth as much as possible. Just happy wife, happy life, as they say.
Yes, absolutely. So farming and the growing of barley, is that at the heart of your whisky production, and how does that fit in with Limerick? And
yeah, no, absolutely. So as I said, I'm from Limerick, and when I set out on this mission to revive Limerick whiskey, I felt it really, really important to have something that was of Limerick origin, Limerick provenance. You know, at the moment, I don't have a distillery. It is my long-term plan to build a distillery in Limerick, and to get to the end point as soon as possible. I focused on what really matters, you know, when you make something that's particularly food. You know, whiskey is a type of food. You're enjoying, it's a beverage, you're enjoying it. It's always important where the quality of the raw material come from. So that's what I focused on. And when you think about whiskey production, the quality of the grain, the challenges of each year affects the whiskey. And it's been phenomenal over the last number of years. You know, when we look back at 2020, when the world came to a halt, and you know, with such unusual conditions, we had fantastic conditions for growing barley. Unfortunately, with 2023, it was quite challenging. I think everybody remember, and it's been quite challenging up until recently. So it's really important to work with the weather and work with the land. So making whiskey from grain to glass is what we do, with all the challenges and all the warts and all.
So this quest to produce this whisky, which was once produced on such a scale in Limerick, started many years ago and is now just coming to fruition with what you are selling now. So, you know, you're at a point now where you're starting to reap benefits from this hard work you've put in. Yeah,
we literally have just had in January of this year our first whiskey that has come of age. As I said, you know,
from your own barley.
Our own barley. Yeah. So it's taken, and I kind of use my kids as kind of yardsticks of time, how much time has passed. And it's hard to believe, you know, that, you know, Hector was in the field and, you know, he couldn't talk, he couldn't walk. Now he can explain to me every part of the machinery that's used in farming, and he practically has all the toys of the farmyard. And he knows probably more about farming than I do now at this stage, the way he's been, you know, shadowing every chance with his grandfather, or, you know, going on machinery. And when we've had the harvest, being inside the combine, he's had a great time.
So he's grown up alongside the business, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The bottles are very beautiful. And each one, I've heard you say, is a time capsule. Can you tell us a little bit what that means?
Yeah, so kind of going back to that, you've got to kind of think about that. To make whiskey, you're starting off with the grain, you know, all of that time, the season. So for instance, each year, the warmth, the challenges that you have is being captured into that grain. And that grain is made of the elements of Limerick, the soil, the rain, the air, everything like that, combining it into making that grain. But then you create your distillate from that, your spirit from that, which then sits in a cask and ages for many years. And it's been influenced by the environment around it. And the environment around it is affecting it in such that you have this moisture, humidity coming in and out, affecting the storage of this cask. And that's allowing for these interesting flavors to develop. And as the flavors develop and then the spirit changes over the many years, you get different compounds and flavors that are very much associated with that duration of time. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating that you can really taste the change and evolution of the whiskey as it goes through this process. So yes, each sip, each drop is a time capsule. Each bottle is a time capsule of that period. And if you bottled a whiskey from a single cask from different times, you'd have completely different whiskies. It's amazing.
People love, don't they, the fact that the aura and the history and then everything that goes into making it, and it really does taste so special. And the bottle itself is a visual representative of so much of that. Can you just describe the bottle a little bit?
Yeah. Well, the bottle, the design of it, I done it myself. Was I wanted to make sure that the brand was true to its origins. As I said, the brand is an old brand that we've revived. So the fact is that you didn't want it to look brand new and modern. So there's elements on it that were very much drawn in from the existing design of the original paperwork and invoices used by the distillery, and also things like the coin on the neck was actually used for the management of spent grains. So people would buy grains from the distillery and they would use these to feed them to animals. So there was these coins we replicated. On the top of the bottle, it's a wax sealed bottle, and it has this wonderful, beautiful tape, which is elements that was from the original invoice of the distillery. And then we have embossed and gold font on the front of the bottle. So it is very handsome looking bottle. And my whole thought process was that a bottle should look as inviting and as almost like a piece of art sitting on your shelf until the time that you decide to crack into it and enjoy it. So that was the logic behind the design of
it does
bottles.
Greatly add to people's enjoyment of it. If you wanted to buy a bottle of this, and people would definitely want to try it, how would they do that?
Well, you can buy it in Shrewsbury in the Reek's whiskey shop there, and also in Lost Barn, which I think you've been out there quite a few times.
Yes, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Yes.
Yeah. So so those are the two places you can buy it. Now they are beautiful whiskies. They are cask strength whiskey. My logic is that this is whiskey that's unaltered. This is as if you were taking a sample directly from the cask, meaning you only drop a few drops of water if you prefer drinking whiskey at a lower strength. But this is whiskey as it is, so not designed by accountants or balance sheets. This is whiskey designed on flavour.
The barrel is obviously very special and provides a lot of the flavour.
Yeah.
So that's is it hard to find these special barrels?
It does, and there's a lot of challenges with it. So you got to think that the barrel is in essence, it's a botanical because it's a wood, and botanicals have natural compounds that form within the lifespan of its growth. So you're not going to have let me rephrase that. You're not going to have two casks identical unless they're made from the same tree, the same wood, but you're always going to have subtle differences. And then the distillate that goes into it is going to have some effect. But ultimately, the challenges are what was in the cask, where has it come from, and transporting it in that period of time that preventing it from spoiling. Now, I'm sure all of us have had a glass of wine and left, it might have been a great party, and the next day you're cleaning up and you're smelling your bottles or your glasses and it doesn't smell right. So that is, in essence, the oxidation of the spirit. And over time, you can smell like a red wine will turn to like a vinegar. So if you have a cask which had red wine in it, you have this short period of time which you need to get it across the world before it spoils. So there's all these challenges. But when you do find those special casks, you wish you had hundreds of them because they're just so unique.
Well, these skills of cooperage and coppersmithing and all the skills you need, are they still there?
There has been a huge revival in Ireland, which has really helped bring back those skill sets. And, there has been new cooperages opening in Ireland. In the past, there was a lot of, I would say, closed services that were only available to very large distilleries and operations that had the ability to maintain and develop their own in-house coopers. Now, there are third-party cooperages that will allow you independence that you can work with. Now, coppersmiths, there's a number of coppersmiths that would be outside of Ireland, in Scotland, in Italy, but there are revivals of coppersmiths in Ireland as well, because naturally there's demand for it. You could be waiting 2 years to get a copper pot still, and you do have some amazing pot stills being made in places like Portugal and Italy as well, and France. So it's all about the design and the shape and the style of still that you want, and you can either go to somebody who has great experience building these stills, or you could go to somebody who's more modern to it, more kind of approaching. So there is the challenges there that you you want to make sure that you get the right still, but there's so many variables to distilling a spirit, which affects the flavour.
So this collaboration with Lost Barn, it occurs to me there are quite a lot of similarities in the coffee procedure and business and yours, in that, the same sort of agriculture and taste derived from all these special features, and even the equipment you use, the roasting and your distilling equipment, I can see similarities. So how did it come about that you collaborated with
Nat and Joe went to school together, so they were good friends, I believe, and I met Joe and Blair at a mutual friend's wedding, and we just hit it off. I think we all really enjoyed each other's company, and there was the idea of, let's do something fun. And this was an ideal way to do that, was we'd bring a cask over from Ireland next time we were coming over. And, we did that, and we brought it over to the roastery. Yeah, absolutely. And so the cask was filled with green coffee beans. And as you said, it's a lot of similarities because you're using a botanical, these are individual grains that are going to be affected from where they've come from, the species of the variety that they are, and the process of then how they're roasted. And it's wonderful when you have a really good coffee company such as Lost Barn. You really taste the quality of the coffee. You're not having this burnt coffee that you do get from these more multinational, kind of larger scale coffee companies. This coffee, you have all the complexities and layers of flavour.
Well, I've tasted it this morning. It was described to me how they roll the barrels up and down the cafe to immerse them in this cask to get the flavours extraordinary. Yeah,
absolutely, it is. And what has been fascinating, just talking with the folks there, is that the beans have even fermented in the cask, and they've almost somewhat organically roasted themselves, and the aromas from the coffee is phenomenal. And it's one of these things that you hope that you will have such great successes when you do a collaboration, but this has just been phenomenal. It's been a real talking point. When anybody smells this coffee, they go, oh my god, this is amazing. And it works so well with cream and or milk, so it's you can make yourself like a virgin Irish coffee with it, so it's great.
What's the origin of the Irish coffee?
Well, the Irish coffee was invented in Foynes in Limerick. So it's a really fascinating story, but in a very brief format. It was a very rough flight. The chef, Joe Shearden, was asked to create something to warm them up, and thought these people are going to be pretty shook. They've been on a long flight out and had to turn around. So he whipped them up some coffee, added a splash of whiskey into it, brown sugar, and a capping of some lovely heavy cream on top, and the Irish coffee was invented. So and one of the guests who was getting off the plane and quite shocking and drank it and said, is this Colombian coffee? And he said, no, it's Irish coffee. So it was the kind of the origins there. So there's always...
What sort of time, year are we talking?
We're
roughly?
Talking the golden era of seaboats, really. So 1940s, 1930s.
So all these commodities are inextricably linked, aren't they, together?
So there's always been a connection between tea and coffee and spirits and wine. Typically, you would have purchased your spirits and wine, from these merchants that would have been grocers. And we really see this kind of at the turn of the Industrial Revolution, where the rise of the middle class, that people had the additional expenditure that they could actually indulge in having a tea or a coffee, versus in the past when water wasn't clean, they were drinking more of these low strength beers. So we really see people enjoying a tea or coffee as an alternative. And, coffee houses were always seen as these places of creativity. And I believe at one period of time, the coffee houses were closed because they were places of rebellion and or of people coming up with these rebellious ideas. So, I guess coffee and whiskey have always worked so well in that regard, that they've always pushed on or kind of encouraged some creativity of some form.
Yes, I mean, I love this idea of the coffee and caffeine tea being introduced in the Western world as a measurable time, and it ties in with explosions of creativity.
Absolutely.
And Amsterdam, the coffee houses, and its sort of freedom of expression being one example.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see how that has all changed the way we enjoy and live our lives, really. But I think the main thing is a pursuit for flavors, and whiskey and coffee just works really well in that regards. And that was kind of the motivation, I guess, for bringing us to this idea together. And I guess there's that mutual appreciation for artisan producers, as we both are. So it was something that was a fun way of introducing both of our brands to both of our community.
They both magically bring people together. The Peaky Blinders, how does that era fit in, where whiskey was drunk to sort of seal deals, and how does that fit into that timeline?
Well, during that timeline of the Peaky Blinders, the Irish whiskey was a drink of choice.
It was the world famous era.
It was a golden era of Irish whiskey. So when at that period of time, Irish whiskey was the drink of choice. We were outselling Scottish whiskey 5-1. So for every 6 bottles sold in Scotland, 5 were Irish, 1 was Scottish. So it was a phenomenal period of time.
So how did that change? It
changed really, I guess, through natural changes over time with Ireland's strive for independence and changes in export markets. When Ireland left the British Empire, we didn't have the single market as such that was there to export our products to the empire. But then also later on you had things such as the prohibition in America, which definitely had an effect on the Irish whiskey industry, because it was a double whammy. You weren't able to export from these Irish ports to British territories, and we couldn't export to America. So our market really closed up very, very quickly.
So is there anything in the myth, keeping the cold away, or it's medicinal? Are there any truth in these things?
Well, there has been that gentleman during COVID times. He drank copious amounts of whiskey, and apparently it helped him recover. But and there was a story about the guy, I believe the chef on the Titanic, who drank so much whiskey before going in the water. And after he survived, and from drinking all the whiskey, it helped him survive being in the water. So I guess there's some link there to whiskey and the cold and starving off. It's probably not medically proven, but I think that's a pretty
my favourite topics, the Titanic. So thank you, Nick. I'd just like to go on to our quick fire questions now. Neat or with water?
I always say neat, but you know what? Some whiskies need a drop of water, particularly some peated whiskies can really open it up. And again, if you prefer your whiskies at lower strength, add a drop of water. I'm not going to be here to tell you how not to, but I prefer to try it neat, and then I'll make my choice after that.
The River Dee or the River Shannon?
Sure, the River Shannon always. You can't.
And which coffee in a coffee shop do you order?
I always go for an espresso, similar to the way I drink my whiskey. So I like it as it is and pure and straight. So, yeah.
Now, I know you've got so many skills we haven't touched on today, but a new skill that you would like to learn.
Oh, a new skill. A new skill I'd like to learn. I always admire working with fire, which sounds funny, but I recently did glass blowing. It was great fun. I like that. I've done a bit of blacksmithing in the past as well as a bit of a hobby. But I think probably welding might be my next little foray. So kind of bringing metals together. Who knows, might be put to use when I'm building that distillery in the future.
More earthy creativity. That sounds wonderful. And finally, have you got a joke or a motto for us?
I think as my father would say, sometimes you've got to throw your shoes across the water and follow them. And I think that would be my motto when it comes to everything. If I was to look back at what I've had to do and get through to start the company, would I have done it? I'm sure, it would have been harder to persuade myself knowing the warts and all, but it's a passion and I love it. And I think for anybody who has a dream, you just have to throw your shoes across the water and make it happen. Because if you listen to everybody else who may tell you God, that's a tough industry to go into. Well, sure, wouldn't you be better off doing something else? Yeah, you would be probably better off. It might be easier to do something else, but there's no fun in taking the easy path, and there's so much more enjoyment from taking risks. And as long as you make your plan and follow through and be true to what you want to do, I think, just throw those shoes across.
So you should be very proud, Nick. Thank you ever so much for talking to me.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all for listening to From the Horse Box. I hope this episode has whetted your appetite for two very special products to enjoy, Thomond Gate Irish Whisky and the Lost Barn Whisky Coffee. Please tune in next month when it could be you in the driving seat.